one of my Jimisms, which I think is where clarity comes from, is keep it simple. Like, I think it's the job of a manager to kind of cut through the noise and try to make it digestible and understandable. That's where clarity comes. The other C that comes with that is consistency, right? Like when you're clear, transparency is also an offshoot of clarity, right? I think that's where clarity comes from, is trying to keep it simple so that people understand, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for our company? What does this mean?
Welcome back to Stepwise, a series of juicy conversations with interesting people and impactful leaders about their journeys, struggles, successes, and lives, and the wisdom we gain along the way. Does wisdom have a place in leadership? Absolutely. Can it be learned and accelerated? I've got 45 years of experience saying that it can. These interviews are intended to share examples of those who are doing it. This week's guest is Jim Fielding, former executives in some of the most admired companies in this country, like Disney, DreamWorks, and Fox. A passionate lover of humanity, Jim's an author, having recently published his book through Wiley called All Pride, No Ego, A Queer Executive's Journey to Living and Leading Authentically. He's also a speaker, consultant, and coach, now living in Atlanta, Georgia. I encourage you to follow Jim on his socials, as well as pick up a copy of his book. It's really clear, powerful, and uplifting. In today's podcast, Jim shares some wisdom he's gained along the way in his successful career and life, like controlling the controllables, but leaving space for the possible, and learning to listen to and love yourself, lessons we can all benefit from practicing. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Jim Fielding. Jim Fielding, thank you for taking the time to come and onto this podcast called Stepwise and talk about leadership and your views, your experience, your journeys. Before we get fully deeply into it, please, Jim, give us a few words on who Jim Fielding is.
I'm joining you from Atlanta, Georgia today. I'm still relatively new. I've been in Atlanta 4 years. I'm a proud Midwesterner by birth and education, and really the first half of my life was spent in various Midwestern cities. And then the bulk of my professional career, which I know we'll get into, was California. I was in California 25 years between San Francisco, LA, and then Orange County. I just kind of kept moving down the coast. And I'm known for my corporate career was retail, media, and entertainment. And I was with some of the world's largest media brands like Disney and DreamWorks and 20th Century Fox. And I chose to make a pivot like many people did during the pandemic. I had an opportunity and, so I've really been this chapter of my life is really spent more entrepreneurially. My book came out, and that's when I really became a coach and speaker and now podcast host. And it's the first time though, like I was over 35 years corporate. So this pivot to being a solopreneur, entrepreneur, whatever I'm called, has been a fascinating learning experience, but I'm enjoying it. I have a lot of passion for it.
Congratulations on the book, by the way. Let me let our listeners know it's called All Pride, No Ego, A Queer Executive's Journey to Living and Leading Authentically. Yeah, congrats. That's a big accomplishment.
Yeah, you don't know. We talked about this, Foster. Like when you write a book, you don't know.
Right.
Well, first off, you don't know if it's ever going to get published. And then when it gets published, you don't know if anyone's actually going to read it. And because people read it and they started to give me feedback and I started to do events and things, it really gave me the confidence to do the pivot because of the feedback I received. So like I kind of say the book is the thing that started it all. Right.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that exact thing. So I know what we can get out of the book. What did you get out of the book?
It gave me confidence. It gave me insights into human being. I love human beings. You and I talked about that. I'm like a student of human beings and human behavior, but it gave me insight, like any book event I did or speaking event or, any community event I attended, I was like a sponge. I was just drinking it in, and I was listening and learning. And honestly, I went back to get my coaching credentials, Foster, because somebody asked me if I would ever coach, right? And I had a coach when I was at Disney. I had so much respect for the coaching profession. And I said, I've never really thought about that, but let me do some noodling. And I did my research, and in a very Jim Fielding, anal retentive type A way, like I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go back to school. Like I'm going to do it by getting educated because I have so much respect for learning. And I went back to Emory and did 6 months of coaching classes. Wow. And, wow. My first lesson in the book is control the controllable, but leave space for the possible. The possible is what the book gave me.
That's excellent. It's your background is so it's fascinating. Kind of corporate executive, author, leadership coach, podcaster, lover of humanity, it's in all those roles that I'm so attracted to want to talk to you. In today's challenged life, world, workplace, you see a lot of the challenges that our workforce is facing. And probably you're at the front lines of seeing people want to bring their full humanity into the workplace.
Yes.
In terms of the challenges you're seeing, what are you most seeing?
I say to people that I've never seen the quote leadership, whatever you call it, executive leadership, C-suite. I don't think it's ever been more challenging than it is right now. And I always say to people, it's easy for me to be the coach because I am a little bit on the sidelines now, right? And
by definition,
And so it's easy to sit on the sidelines. Like I never throw pot shots because I know that if I was actively in an operating role, in a C-suite role, a CEO or president role, I would be the most challenged I've ever been. I probably would be back in coaching, frankly, because I feel, again, it's bad to control the control, but there's so many things that companies are not in control of right now that they have to react to, right? So, tariff, again, regardless of how you voted, the tariff situation, global conflicts, supply chain disruptions, unrest, civil unrest in the United States, right? Protests and, ICE, roundups and things like that. There's just there's so many things that if you were a human being running a company right now or in an operating role in a company, that you kind of wake up in the morning and you're like, oh my God, like what happened overnight, right? And and what I'm coaching a lot of people on, which you'll understand, is we can't necessarily control the situation, but what we can control is our reactions to the situation, right? And I think it's calling for calm, measured, resilient, smart leaders right now to not panic, not overreact and swing like the pendulum every time something happens, but to really tap into their years of intelligence and experience and wisdom to manage, in this situation. And it's funny because one of the things being a California executive, we always had our contingency planning for earthquakes and forest fires, right? We would have these plans, like these really well-baked plans. And like, oh my gosh, what happens if there's an earthquake? What happens if there's a fire? Which unfortunately in California is a pretty regular thing now. What we didn't have back then was any kind of contingency planning for what's going on right now. Like we didn't have that. And so I think there's also a sense in C-suites right now that they're kind of making it up as they go along, right? Because they have to react and things are happening and they haven't necessarily seen it before. And so what I try to coach on is history and cyclical. Like, okay, has there ever been anything like this before? And how did you handle that, right? Because it's not, I don't think it's a time for completely reinventing the wheel, if you know what I'm saying. And so you do try to fall back, not only on your own experience, but those of people around you.
To that point, Jim, and your thesis of control the controllable and make space for the possible, which I love. I think executives, given the unpredictable nature of change, In the past, we could have said, okay, there's going to be an earthquake, and we know there's going to be a fire in LA, and it's going to be followed by rains and floods, and we know that stuff. Fairly deterministic. We know the Santa Ana winds are going to drive. Like,
totally
we know
predictable, pretty predictable.
We don't know about tariffs. We don't know about ice. We don't know about any of that kind of stuff. And so it's interesting listening to you talk. It's almost as though one of the things that leaders today probably need to lose control over, or stop the pretense that they have control over a linear, deterministic future.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant.
We just don't.
I think they have to accept that they're not going to have a project management plan for every situation.
That's right. That's right. And so if you let go of that pretense that, yeah, I know what tomorrow's going to bring, because you don't.
Right.
And go the level below. What are the skills that allow me? And this is to your point. What are the skills that allow me to survive amidst all of that change? Deep connection with my team. Our ability to make sense of whatever level we can make sense of. Our ability to solve problems with not enough data. Whatever that next level things are, because the apple cart has definitely been upset. And so I think it takes us to a very different level of thinking. I'll tell you a quick story. One of my dearest friends in the world and a client of mine for over 30 years, one of the best leaders of people and operations I've ever seen. Dude's got it together. He figures it out. My wife makes fun of him. He calls him Mr. Rogers when he makes presentations, because he just comes across as, that kind of warm, cuddly kind of guy. But he knows where every nickel in every operation is and all that stuff. Very sharp, very smart guy. And I've never seen him more beleaguered. He's a healthcare leader. And so, one day it's Medicaid funding, and the next day it's they're going to change an exemption that really hurts. He runs a children's hospital. It hurts children's hospitals disproportionately, and they're trying to care, regardless of ability to pay, some of the sickest and neediest kids in the world. And then ICE shows up in their place and wants to, because they've heard a rumor. Just thinking that. Yeah, they're in LA, and so they've heard a rumor that there are some undocumented people working there or visiting their children there who are, post surgery, and how do you nobody trains us for that.
No. And I think to your point, it's where you really have to be self-aware and kind of do your inventory and say, I am good at some of these things and I have a toolkit, but there's some of these things I'm not good at. And also be vulnerable enough. I mean, you understand that, Foster, to raise your hand and be I don't know what to do. I haven't faced this before, and call peers. And again, call your board of directors, call your trusted advisors, and actually be humble enough and vulnerable enough to say, can we talk about this? And how are you handling it? And because I think there's learning on the go, basically, right? I mean, there's a little bit of this sense with many executives of you're learning how to fly the plane while you're in the air, right? And I think the other skill set, and you touched on it, I think it's scenario planning, right? I think there's this what if of you know what? We did it with the fires, but let's do 4 scenarios.
Right.
What if ICE shows up at our place of employment and there's a quote raid, or we hear of a raid? We've probably never talked about that before, but we should, right? What if the budget goes through and Medicare and Medicaid change, and how are we going to take care of the people we serve, right? Right. I think there's you probably are doing more scenario planning and more what if than you've ever done before. And hopefully half of them you never have to use. But I think there's a certain amount of preparedness that will help you stay calm. And I think the biggest thing is, and I coach on this a lot, is to your people, you need to look calm. You need to look like we're going to be okay. You might be a mess inside. And by the way, this is me coaching myself, because I I was always told I wore my emotions on my sleeve and I'd be a horrible poker player. You know all the phrases, right?
Sure,
Because
of course.
I have a very expressive face. I talk with my hands. I'm doing it even in the podcast. Um, I would be coaching myself to be like, to your people, when you exit that office or you park in the garage or you get on that Zoom call, you have to look calm and you have to look secure, because if you look nervous, if you look insecure, if you look unsure, it's going to ripple throughout your team. And that doesn't matter if your team is 10 people or 10,000 people.
Right.
I think calm leadership measured leadership is so important right now.
Well, Jim, I love that. And I see the flip side of it as well, meaning you are an advocate for authenticity. And authenticity in that moment is, holy shit, I don't know what to do. And on the other side, we're trying to project calm and confidence. We can together work through this. How do you strike that balance?
I love this question, Fuzz, with this line of thought, because I do think, again, when you're a leader, again, depending on the size of your team, you probably have a senior team or an executive team or a C-suite team or something, right? You have those 5 or 6 people. I think with them, you pull them into a room and you're like, holy shit, right? Like, okay, guys.
This is real.
This is real. And you're super honest with them and you're super vulnerable with them. And you're saying, I need you. I need your best and your brightest. I need your talent. I need you to be honest with me. We need to be talking the truth to each other. If you hear anything, I want to know about it. We've got to be actively listening. We've got to be reading the news. We've got to be accessing our resources. I think where the calmness comes in is as you get deeper into the organization, right? But I think there's absolutely a group of people that work for you and with you that you have to be human and humble and vulnerable with. And I also think this is where in your network, other executives at other companies, other people within your industry, even your competitors in some case, where you're literally picking up the phone and saying, hey, do you have 10 minutes for me to bounce something off of you? Like, I think this is where the networking and the, because everybody's facing it. Like everybody's facing it. And so like right now, with what's gone on in California recently with the National Guard and all that kind of stuff, if you have executive contacts or leadership contacts, like say you're in Montana or you're in Kansas or you're in Florida, check in. Like, and I've done this even, like I've sent text and emails to my California network saying, are you okay? How's it going? Because again, what you see on the news sometimes is 10 times worse than what's really going on. And I'll say to them, what have you learned? Like any insights? How are your teams? Because it could be your state or your city tomorrow.
So you use words like humble, authentic. Let's talk collaborator,
totally.
What are the new competencies for today's leaders that we ought to be paying attention to, as opposed to the planning, controlling, organizing, directing, and stuff that we've learned for 100 years? What now?
I think we've touched on some of them. I mean, active listening, which is different than just listening, right? I think active listening and probing for understanding and really connecting with your team, however that happens, virtually or in person. One of my other learnings from the book, lifelong learning and staying constantly curious. I feel like you have to be studying right now. I mean, you have to be studying what's happening with tariffs. You have to be studying what's happening with supply chain. If you're in an industry that's impacted by it. I mean, you mentioned your friend at the Children's Hospital and Medicare and Medicaid changes. Like, don't wait for the news to tell you what's happening. Like, dive in, right? Like, study. So I think that like educating yourself and being an informed consumer and an informed leader is super important right now.
Is it too much to extend that notion of listening and learning to our workforces? So like we need to take the next level of listening to really find out where our people are. because they're getting hammered by this stuff all the time.
I think what I would have done, like say I was at Fox or Disney right now, I would have been doing a lot of listening sessions. I would have been doing small group, large group, virtual, in person, because I always managed a remote group, a hybrid group before it ever, I had offices around the world. So I was always on Zooms and Teams with people.
Yeah.
But I would also go visit. I think that's the other thing I'd be doing. I'd be on planes right now and getting to my regional offices or my regional headquarters to touch as many people as I could. I think, I would be overemphasizing my open door policy and contact and, my email and all that kind of stuff. And again, I would also be encouraging my leaders throughout the organization at all levels to be doing the same thing. Like I would try to be role modeling, walking the walk and talking the talk, and then holding my people accountable, saying, you need to be doing the same thing. It's not just me. It's not just I'm the president or I'm the CEO. I'm going to do it. It's like we all need to be doing it. And a lot of where it comes from that I've been talking about lately, the other word I've been talking a lot about lately is just kindness, right? Like, let's be kind to each other.
Yeah.
I've literally been going back to the golden rule, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. I've been talking about the platinum rule, treat others as they deserve to be treated, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of humanistic skills that are important right now. And particularly depending on the makeup of your team. If you have immigrant people on your team, legal immigrants, illegal immigrants, just be cognizant of, in my case, LGBTQ, basically under attack, the DEI rollback. Like there is a lot of things happening to constituencies that you are managing. Black Lives Matter, Latino, women issues. If you're leading humans, be aware of what's impacting humans.
Right? Yeah, well said. These aren't theoretical constructs.
Mm-mm.
When an edict comes down, it changes the lives of not only the people, but their families, their
families, 100%.
Their futures, all of it. It has dramatic impact, and leaders are right in the middle of that firestorm, having to deal with that.
And they're looking at you. They're looking at you for you're up there. Like they're not holding you on a pedestal, but they're watching you. And oh, by the way, how about the articles that AI is going to steal all of our jobs, right? They're reading these articles that like the evil AI is going to come and replace, 80% of the workforce. Right. And to your point, they have mortgages and they have college tuitions and they have private school tuitions and they're literally like, is AI going to take my job? In addition to everything else, the pace of technology is higher than it's ever been. The change of technology and the impact of technology is faster and higher than it's ever been. And again, they're looking at you because they rely on their salary. They rely on their benefits.
We haven't taught this level of workforce how to think about that stuff because we're on our heels.
Totally.
To your point, if you're a lifelong learner and you're curious and you're trying to make sense of all of it, how are we passing that along in the right ways to our people? Or are we staying silent because we don't know? We don't know the full impacts.
Right.
And letting people make up meaning for themselves, which I fear is happening an awful lot.
And I agree. I think in the absence of a narrative, to your point, they make up their own narrative. And this, we've known this as long as human beings have existed. The rumor mill is 10 times worse than the official narrative, right? And we also know in today's day and age of social media and 24/7 news cycles, people get a lot of their information from their peer group and their communities, right? Yes. And they trust their peer group and their communities. So you're also kind of going up against that because by the time you actually officially opine on something, there's probably been, 43 LinkedIn posts and, Facebook posts about it. And again, I think managing in a 24/7 news cycle and managing in a, instantaneous, instant feedback social media world is new for a lot of leaders. I didn't grow up on it. I'm not a digital native.
No. Right. Right.
My God, I remember when we used, this ages me, but when we used to handwrite messages and fax them, like pre-email, right? Like when I started in merchandising at the Gap, we communicated with Hong Kong by writing faxes and standing at the one fax machine. If like you were the assistant, which I was, you stood at that fax machine until like 9 o'clock at night because you had to get in line and behind everybody else. Like I remember when, we got email and all of a sudden you could do email from your desktop and BlackBerry. You remember when we had Blackberries, right? Like getting a BlackBerry was a big deal. And so, like the whole thing on AI, I especially think being a solopreneur right now, I'm going on a lot of these platforms. Like I'll read an article about a platform. I'll go on and play. They all give you 14 days free trials, right? I'll go on and play and say, what's this one do? That's interesting. What's that one do? Doesn't mean I sign up for them all. It doesn't mean I'm going to use them all. But I think it's my job to be aware of them.
Jim, you've used several words to describe yourself. I think about your LinkedIn platform. And here, I'm going to give you 3 words, and I'd love you to contemporize them for us.
Okay.
And I'll explain what I mean in a second. Clarity, courage, and compassion. What does clarity mean in this 24/7, 365, non-digital native versus digital native, multi-generation world? What is clarity today?
Yeah, I think this goes, again, I have these things called Jimisms, Foster, right? And like anybody that's worked for me, will tell you Jimisms, right? They gave that name, right? They're like, oh God, he's doing a Jimism. One of my Jimisms, which I think is where clarity comes from, is keep it simple. Like I think it's the job of a manager to kind of cut through the noise and try to make it digestible and understandable. That's where clarity comes. The other C that comes with that is consistency, right? Like when you're clear, transparency is also an offshoot of clarity, right? I think that's where clarity comes from, is trying to keep it simple so that people understand, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for our company? What does this mean for me? Courage. Yeah, courage. Woo! Courage is like the companies that are sticking to belonging and inclusion and not rolling back DEI, even publicly traded companies, in the face of, admittedly, what's a backlash against DEI, particularly the performative part of DEI. People who truly believe, have courage in their convictions, whatever those convictions are. Do you have courage in your convictions to stick with them and articulate them, even in the face of adversity, because we have adversity? And are you the type of leader, I mean, not to get military, but like people are going to get on board with you and move mountains, right? Like that to me is courage. And then I think compassion, and you and I have talked a lot about compassion before we were on this call and on this call. It's that empathy and knowing that people are going through it right now, right? They're going through it. They're concerned and they're confused. And again, regardless of where they are in the political spectrum or how they voted, it is confusing right now. Like, and you're getting lots of input and you're getting lots of different changes, and you're hearing your taxes are going up, your taxes are going down, right? Your Medicare is going up, your Medicare is going down. Costs are going to go up because of tariffs, costs are going to go down. Like you're hearing so much confusing noise. And again, I can't solve that for everybody, but I can be compassionate as a leader to know that they're going through that and that they're stressed, that their family unit is stressed, right? And I've gone through that before when we were like going through layoffs, right? Because listen, I worked at Disney and Fox, we reorged every year at Disney, whether you were up or down 20%. We were like masters of reorganization. And people would come to you and say, I'm thinking about buying a house. Should I sign up for a mortgage, right? And you'd be like, I don't know, right? Like you could never really come out and say it. But I think, again, being compassionate goes back to the active listening of like knowing people are trying to make major life decisions. My kids got accepted to Stanford, right? Like, should they be going to Stanford or should they be going to San Diego State, right? Like it's, I had a lot of those conversations. And again, I can't tell them what to do, but I think just being compassionate and again, human, and understanding that, yes, they work for you. And so, they're with you 40, 50, 60 hours a week, but they have a whole life outside of working for you. And they might have aging parents. They might have a child with special needs. Like, there's just a lot of things about being a compassionate human being that this comes from.
Yeah. I'm advocating for a new covenant
Mm.
between organizations, their leaders, and their workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Given all of the dramatic and dynamic and complex changes we're seeing, a covenant that organizations can commit to create a psychologically safe place for people.
God, I love that.
A covenant where you will be honored and listened to, not necessarily conspired with or, but attunement, not, I can't think of the right word right now. If you think about the kind of environment that you think these times call for, what would you say? What is in this covenant that needs to be?
Foster, I love this so much because I keep talking about psychological and physical safety too, because I think there's some physical safety issues too. I think what's in that covenant, to your point of you're allowed to ask questions. There's not a bad question, right? That you're allowed to ask questions, or you're allowed to ask for clarity, or you're allowed to ask if you don't understand, or by the way, you're also allowed to disagree. Yeah. At the end of the day, you work for a company, and a company has processes and a company has culture, but you're allowed to disagree. I think one of the things, like, especially in benefits, that you have access to mental health resources right now. We have a mental health crisis, right?
Yeah.
I tell young kids, I spend a lot of time, you and I talked about that, I spend a lot of time on college campuses with like graduating undergrads and graduates. And I always say to them, like, when you go in for your interviews, you should have questions prepared, right? And if you're trying to get to culture, and if you're trying to get to community, like, one of the questions to ask is, do you have mental health benefits as part of your benefit package? If they do, because by the way, that's voluntary. Many companies don't have that. But to me, if they have mental health resources, or you get 10 sessions at a reduced rate, that shows that they're putting their money where their mouth is. When you join a company, like I said, there's an existing culture and there's an existing way of getting things done. And so you need to test to say, is that a culture that I'm going to be comfortable in? And I understand Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need jobs, we need shelter, we need food, we need benefits. But I also think, depending on where you live, you do have choice on where you work. And you should be, again, an educated applicant. You and I were talking about aging parents. Like, you have to be an educated consumer when you go to the doctor, right? Like, we talked about this. I have a mother with dementia right now. My sister and I are managing her care. We spent a lot of time reading about dementia and questions to ask. And so that when we meet with the doctor, we know what to ask. We know about what medicine she's on. Is there, interactivity with her other medicines? That's being an educated consumer, an educated patient. We have to be that for my mom, because my mom can't ask those questions now. And even if she could, she wouldn't retain them. So we have to be that person.
Yep.
I feel the same way when I'm looking for jobs, or if I'm advising someone who's looking for a job.
Yep. Yep.
Don't just show up for the interview and ask, how much am I going to make and what my benefit, like, actually study the company. And again, in these days of social media, there's LinkedIn and there's Glassdoor and there's all of these things. You can actually read a lot about a company, or even link in with people that work at the company currently and ask them, what are your favorite things about working there? What do you not like? Like,
one of the interesting things, you and I have not spoken about this, but one of the interesting things about leading in this time, while there are so many differences, complexities, maybe, urgencies. I'm old enough to have lived through the 60s, and there were a lot of similarities to that kind of social unrest, political divide, geopolitics, economy, all kinds of that stuff. Our solutions now that we're talking about really, honestly, are not that new. Listen to people, show them regard, treat them like a human being. Recognize that when Jim is dealing with his mother's dementia, that when he comes into work, he doesn't check that at the door. That's part of how he shows up
story,
as a human. It absolutely is. And so now we're advocating leaders, listen more deeply, learn to discern judgment from, observation, be able to sit with tension in different ways without immediately seeking to resolve it.
Yeah,
Jim,
that's so
I know
good.
we're getting close to time, but
No.
I would ask you kind of as maybe a capstone kind of question.
Yeah.
You're a storyteller.
Yeah.
You're a coach. You're a leader. You're an executive. Tell me a story, or tell us a story about a leader who's doing it right, who's doing the right stuff today that you're noticing. And it could be a composite of a few, but tell us a story of somebody's handling this.
Yeah, no. You know what? I'm going to tell the story. I'm going to use the person's name because I have so much respect for him. So there's a gentleman named Andy Mooney, who is the CEO of Fender Guitar. And cool. Why I know him is because he was my boss for 11 years at Disney. And he is the consummate, what I would call, and it's a training we used to go through, like situational leader. Like he led me and worked with me different than he worked with some of my peers. Like he had a direct report group. He was the head of Disney Consumer Products when I was there. Disney Store was part of Disney Consumer Products. So I had a peer group. I think he had 11 direct reports. And he had that skill to manage each of us individually to our strengths and our development opportunities. But he also put together a team that had complementary skill sets, right? So when we came together, the 11 of us were almost like his Avengers, like his superheroes, right? And we had different skills. And I've kept in touch with them all these years. We haven't worked together since 2011, but I've stayed in touch with them all these years. And we actually were at a conference together about 18 months ago. And we've stayed in better touch since reconnecting personally. And I've talked to him because he's based in LA. He has people around the world. Fender is a global company. And I asked him, what are you doing, right? You're in LA, where his office is. I happen to know is where a lot of the resistance has been in the protests. Okay. And he said, and something I mentioned earlier, he said, I'm over communicating. I am doing more one-on-ones, more group meetings, more Zoom calls. I've been on the road. I've flown to our different offices. I've flown to where we make the guitars, and they do other instruments besides guitars. And he said, I'm working harder than I've worked in a long time. And he said, I'm not a young man, but I know this is what I have to do because this is what the team needs. And I think he's just an excellent example of he flexes his style to the team and what the team needs. But he's flexing his style. That to me is, again, back to situational leadership. What they taught us when you went through that training, I went through that training over 20 years ago, it was the leader's job to flex their style, not the team member's job to flex to the leader. Yeah. Like that's basically the core of situational leadership.
A leader's job is to create aligned, committed, passionate followers. The way you do that in today's place is you meet them where they are. You get to know them. And with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, purpose is so important. Help them make sure that they're connected to all of that stuff.
For sure.
No, fabulous. And
there are generational differences. It's so important that you talk that out. Oh boy. Yeah. How a baby boomer, millennial wants to be managed versus, to your point, a Gen Z or Alpha.
Oh boy.
Very different.
Yeah. It's interesting. The genesis for this latest book started at a dinner party here in Bozeman, Montana, when an aging boomer like me was railing about probably a younger millennial who was a member of his surgical team. And she wanted to take a couple hours on a Thursday afternoon off to go watch her kid's soccer game.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, that's not the way we do it. And that's when I went through medical school, I went through and I looked at him and said, what if she's not wrong?
Mm-hmm.
What if she is? We didn't.
What if their way is the right way? No, I agree.
Yeah, I started this whole curiosity here.
Yeah, that's it. You were coaching. That way, you were coaching at your dinner party, basically. Yeah.
I was paid in alcohol, but
providing
a coaching skill.
You were coaching for sure.
So, Jim, what's filling you up these days? What are you reading? What are you listening to? How are you staying?
Yeah. I mean, I'm listening. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I always did. I'm a physical book reader. For whatever reason, I'm not a great audio book person. I think I'm just old, but I listen to podcasts. And so I'm listening to a lot of, authenticity, kindness, positive intention. Jay Shetty. Jay Shetty is one I listen to a lot too. Simon Sinek.
Jay's great.
Mel Robbins are some of the bigger ones, right? Where it's the,
have you read Let Them?
Yes. And I find that really quite interesting. It's funny. I read it, and that is one I listened to because I was on a lot of planes. And so I downloaded it audio as well. Yeah. And I'm, because I was a political science undergrad, right? I mean, I am studying a lot what's happening in the world. Yeah. So there's some things that are scaring me with the world, but there's also some things that I'm, trying to understand, and, the conflicts that are happening, and, trying to look at history, and,
cool.
I'm trying to stay abreast of that as well. I mean, that's more, I think that's being a global citizen, but I think it's all also just, I'm fascinated by history. I'm fascinated by.
Well, Jim, you've been so terrific. What a pleasure! What a pleasure to get to know you and get to chat a bit. Please, if you have not read Jim's book, All Pride, No Ego, please pick it up from Amazon or wherever you can find it, your local bookstore, and subscribe to his newsletter and listen to the Jim Fielding and Friends podcast, available on all platforms.
Yes, Foster's going to be a future guest. We'll let you know when.
I love that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jim.
Have a great day.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you. You know what's great? I get to know and have great conversations with people like Jim Fielding. As you heard, he's a business leader, keynote speaker, author, and great example of authentic leadership. Through his journey, he's learned a bunch, like keeping the main thing, but leaving space for the possible, and the power of being oneself. Set the table, invite cool people like Jim Fielding, magic happens. Until next time, leaders, step wise.
Thank you for listening to Stepwise. Stepwise is brought to you by Dr. Foster Mobley. Edited and promoted by Zetis. You can listen to more episodes wherever you stream podcasts. Find out more at fostermobleymt.com or follow us on social media at Foster Mobley. That's FOSTERMOBLEY. We look forward to having an inspiring conversation with you soon.